Thank you so much for listening to American Medicine Today. I am Kimberly Bonatti, joined by Ethan Euchre.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes. Jeff Wagstaff.
Hello, Kimberly.
Hello. And world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Alfred Bonatti.
Oh, you're a strong man.
I'm in a good mood today.
That's good.
Most of us are familiar with the use of incubators to help nurture premature babies back to health. But did you know that the practice was first introduced by a doctor at boardwalk sideshows back in the late 1890s?
I did not know that.
Neither did I. Now, joining us right now is Don Raffel, whose latest book tells the strange case of Dr. Couney, how a mysterious European showman saved thousands of American babies. Thanks for being here, Don.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now, Don, when I saw the write-up for this book, I thought, this is insane. I mean, you got to set the stage for us. It's 1898. There's rows of boxes that hold premature infants at a boardwalk sideshow. How did this happen?
That's right. Well, the incubator as we know it was invented in France in the late 1800s. And the man who invented it was an engineer. And so since he wasn't a doctor, he started showing it at charity exhibitions and shows in Europe. And he was bragging that his invention was so fantastic that it was basically automatic. You just put the baby in and it kind of takes care of himself. So a minute later, all kinds of showmen wanted to get in on the act, even Bailey and Barnum and Bailey. Dr. Martin Couney was one of those showmen. What was interesting about him is that he's the only one who really stuck with it because it wasn't automatic. It wasn't like a toaster oven. So as the years went by, he was out there at Coney Island in Atlantic City and various theme parks showing off this new technology with infants in incubators.
Wow. And all these people just went to a sideshow and dropped off their premature babies?
Yeah, like
sounds so odd.
Hospitals were actually giving him babies, right? Because they didn't know what to do with preemies and to keep them alive. Yeah.
That's right. So this went on for more than 40 years, which for me is, and I called it the strange case. His story is strange, but the culture to me seems even stranger, that unfortunately hospitals made some attempts to use incubators. They weren't getting good results, and they weren't getting good results for the same reason the other showmen weren't, which is they didn't have enough skilled nurses. They didn't really have people trained to feed these preemies. Hospitals back then were actually not all that clean. Couney created something that looks kind of like a NICU, but it was right out on the midway. So the care he offered was superior to anything that you could have gotten in a hospital at that time. People who were millionaires would send their premature infants to the sideshow because they couldn't buy better care.
It's amazing to me that in the 40s and 50s, a lot of these preemies went blind, but Couney's babies retained their eyesight. Can you explain to us how that happened and why?
So that was completely a lucky accident for him. By the 40s and 50s, after World War II, most American hospitals did have life-saving equipment for preemies. What happened is they kind of thought if some oxygen is good, then more would be better. The extra oxygen was what caused the blindness. Couney didn't realize it, but the fact that he never had as much oxygen in those machines, and he was a showman, so he'd take the babies out to show them off. They never got the oxygen saturation that caused them to go blind.
And he was even decades ahead of the medical establishment with things such as he recommended the mother's milk, the breast milk, and then he also changed the protocol of how infants were held and things like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so he was picking up a protocol from Paris at the time. He claimed that he was the protege of a very famous French doctor, which there's absolutely no evidence that he was. He was in this country at the time. He was supposedly having an internship in Paris. But he was absolutely adamant about only breast milk. And doctors really did understand that that was better for preemies too, but it was expensive and they couldn't necessarily afford it. If the mother wasn't available, you might have to go to a breast milk bank. You might not have enough. He paid for wet nurses to live on the premises. So he spared no expense in the care of these preemies, which was funded by people coming and paying a quarter to see them.
Don, you took the words out of my mouth earlier when you said he basically created a NICU. That was my question is, obviously this was a sideshow, but it sounds like he developed an intensive care unit within the circus or the sideshow for these children.
He absolutely did. And I will say the secret sauce here was the nurses. who, even now in a NICU are so important. He had really highly trained nurses who knew how to take care of these children. And he also had, quote unquote, assistants who were young doctors who really did have medical licenses, and they'd come in. And so he never really did anything exactly illegal. He would say to these young assistants, could you fill out this paperwork for the health department? So he never really signed anything that he legally couldn't have.
Covering his butt, yeah.
CYA,
Yeah.
Now, Dawn, some of his patients are even still alive today, correct?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And many of them lived into a long old age. One woman I spoke to weighed 2 pounds in 1920. The attending obstetrician said to the parents, she's not going to live the day. There is absolutely no hope. Her father wrapped her in a towel and took a cab to Couney Island. This woman lived to be 96 years old.
Wow.
The youngest are in their 70s now. Many of them lived very happy, healthy, long lives.
Dawn, do you have pictures in the book? I'm dying to see it.
Yeah.
Yes, there are 50 pictures in the book.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. I wish we had more time, but thank you so much. Dawn Raffel, whose latest book tells the strange case of Dr. Couney, how a mysterious European showman saved thousands of American babies. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks,
Thank
Dawn.
you.
Have a good one.
Take care.